The airport buzzed like a hive. People rushing, flight announcements bouncing off the walls, and rolling suitcases dragging like restless drums across polished floors. Families scrambled with kids. Businessmen tapped furiously at phones. Couples whispered hurried goodbyes at the gate. But when Danielle Brooks stepped in, she carried an air that slowed everything around her. Tall, elegant, black suit hugging her frame, silk scarf adding just a trace of color. Heels clicking in rhythm like a metronome of confidence. Danielle wasn't ordinary. She was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar real estate empire, one of the youngest and most successful black women to ever hit that mark in America. A woman who had clawed her way from foster homes and empty kitchens, who had once been laughed at for even dreaming of Harvard. But here in the airport, she was stripped of titles. To the world, she was just another traveler. Still, she walked with the kind of composure that screamed, "I belong here." As she rolled her carry-on toward the first-class check-in, she felt the familiar weight of stairs. A pearl-draped woman sized her up. A man with a Rolex whispered something to his wife. Another clutched his boarding pass tighter. Danielle had grown used to it, but it never stopped cutting. At the first-class counter stood a middle-aged attendant. At first glance, she wore the perfect smile. Professional, welcoming, routine. Until her eyes landed on Danielle. The smile cracked. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said in a clipped voice. "This line is for first-class passengers." Danielle tilted her head slightly, sliding her ticket forward. "I know. That's why I'm here." The attendant glanced down, then back at Danielle. Her tone sharpened. "Economy is down the hall. This line is reserved." The air thickened. A businessman behind Danielle shuffled awkwardly. A college kid raised his phone just slightly higher. Danielle's voice stayed smooth. "It says first class, right there, in bold." The attendant didn't bother looking again. Instead, she leaned forward, dropping her tone. "Sweetheart, I've worked here 20 years. I can tell when someone doesn't belong." A sharp silence followed. Racism isn't always loud. Sometimes it's soft, polite, disguised as procedure. But it stings when someone decides you don't belong and pierce deeper than open hatred. Murmurs spread. Does she really have first class? She looks, I don't know. Maybe she's trying to sneak in. Danielle's fingers clenched around her purse handle, but her face stayed unreadable. She had trained herself long ago. Never let them see the crack. A man in a gray suit finally spoke up. "If the ticket says first class, that's all that matters." The attendant snapped. "Sir, mind your own business." Phones tilted upward. Passengers tried to look casual while recording. Danielle exhaled slowly. "Either scan the ticket or call your supervisor." Her calmness was heavier than anger. There comes a point when silence becomes resistance. Dignity becomes defiance. Because the moment you refuse to shrink, their prejudice begins to tremble. The attendant stiffened, pressing the intercom. Within minutes, a supervisor walked up. Young, male, clearly new, wearing a badge that still shined like it was fresh out of the box. "What's going on here?" The attendant folded her arms. "This woman insists she's first class, but clearly, you can see." She stopped short. The supervisor blinked at Danielle, then at the golden lettering on her ticket. His mouth opened slightly, then shut again. He scanned it with the machine. The beep confirmed. First class, gate at 12. The silence was brutal. Passengers leaned closer. Cameras zoomed in. The attendant's face flushed pink. Danielle didn't smile. She didn't need to. She simply said, "Thank you," and began walking toward the gate. But the story wasn't over. When Danielle arrived at the boarding gate, whispers followed her. Two flight attendants exchanged glances. A tall man in designer shades shook his head and muttered, "Unbelievable." Then came the voice of another gate attendant. "Economy boarding is that way, ma'am." The same sting, the same dismissal. Danielle simply raised her ticket again, offering no words. But this time, she didn't wait for their reaction. She stepped aside, pulled out her phone, and typed a message. Just one line. Within minutes, everything would change. As the boarding process began, confusion spread. Passengers grew restless as the announcement came through. "Attention, Flight 422. Boarding has been delayed. Please remain seated." Minutes passed. Then another announcement. "Attention, all passengers. Flight 422 has been canceled. Please return to the service desk." The terminal erupted. Groans, shouts, demands for explanations. And in the middle of it all, Danielle sat calmly in a leather chair, phone still in her hand. Because Danielle Brooks wasn't just a passenger. Her company owned a controlling stake in the airline. With one message to the board, she had pulled the plug. Sometimes power doesn't shout. It doesn't fight. It doesn't even explain. Sometimes power moves in silence, and the world feels the earthquake after. What looked like humiliation turned into revelation. What looked like weakness became control. She didn't need to raise her voice, because she owned the very skies above them. The canceled passengers flooded the counters, angry and impatient. The attendants panicked, fumbling with explanations. Word spread fast. Within hours, social media exploded. Black CEO humiliated at airport, then cancels entire flight. Clips of the check-in incident went viral. The airline released a statement. "We sincerely apologize for the unacceptable behavior toward Ms. Brooks. Diversity, respect, and equality are core to our values." But the truth was clear. The world had witnessed the cost of disrespect. And Danielle? She didn't brag. She didn't post. She simply moved on. Because she hadn't acted out of revenge. She acted out of principle. This story isn't about canceled flights. It isn't about wealth or revenge. It's about worth. The worth that no one gets to define but you. They tried to reduce her to a seat in economy. But she reminded them she owned the airline. Prejudice will try to shrink you, to push you into smaller lines, smaller boxes, smaller dreams. But remember this: dignity doesn't ask for permission. Respect isn't given by strangers. It is claimed, owned, and defended, sometimes with nothing more than one silent gesture.